Welcome to Broadcasting Seeds, the podcast where we dig into the strange, the mysterious, and the downright unsettling. I'm your host, Bennett Tanton, and today we're diving into a celebration of chaos, laughter, and maybe a little bit of sacrilege, the Feast of Fools and Twelfth Night Chaos. Now picture this. It's a frigid medieval winter, and while the nobility are snug in their castles, the common folk are lighting bonfires, guzzling ale, and crowning a peasant as their mock king. But this isn't just some rowdy party. It's a ritual steeped in the supernatural, where the veil between our world and the spirit realm is said to be razor thin. These festivals weren't just about letting loose. They flipped society on its head. Peasants became kings, bishops cracked dirty jokes, and the rules that kept everyone in their place dissolved, if only for a day or two. And behind all the revelry lurked deeper questions. What happens when chaos replaces order, when the sacred becomes profane? And why do humans, time and again, embrace the idea of a world turned upside down? In this episode, we're going to explore how these bizarre medieval traditions weren't just celebrations. They were statements. They were about balance, inversion, and humanity's deep-rooted need to face the supernatural head-on. We'll break down the history, the symbolism, and even the modern echoes of these wild midwinter rites. So buckle up, because this episode is going to be a ride through the weird, the cryptic, and the downright spooky. By the end of this, you might just find yourself craving a mug of mead and a crown made of holly leaves, or maybe just a quiet night where the spirits don't show up. Let's get into it. Feast of Fools has roots as tangled as a medieval forest. To understand its origins, we have to look back to the Roman festival of Saturnalia, a week-long celebration of chaos, excess, and role reversals. Think office holiday party meets Mardi Gras, but with a lot more togas. During Saturnalia, slaves dined at their masters' tables. Gambling was encouraged, and the usual rules of Roman decorum flew out the window. Sound familiar? That's because this wild Roman bash laid the groundwork for the medieval Feast of Fools. Fast forward to the early Middle Ages, where Christianity was spreading like wildfire, but not without a few compromises. The Church, in its infinite wisdom, realized that if they couldn't beat the pagans, they might as well join them. So many of these older rowdy traditions were absorbed into Christian holidays, albeit with a more holy veneer. Enter the Feast of Fools. By the 12th century, the Feast of Fools was a full-blown event, especially in France and England. It usually took place around the New Year and was led by none other than the Lord of Misrule, a commoner elected to preside over the festivities. The church clergy, yes, the very people who were supposed to be the moral backbone of society, would don masks, crack bawdy jokes, and even mock their own sacred rituals. Imagine your local priest putting on a puppet show with the church relics, and you'll get the idea. But why all the mischief? Medieval life was grim, folks. Between plagues, famines, and oppressive feudal systems, people needed a release valve. The Feast of Fools was that valve, allowing the lower classes to blow off steam, mock their oppressors, and experience, if only briefly, what life might be like without strict hierarchies. It was cathartic, rebellious, and oddly a way to reinforce the very order it temporarily disrupted. Yet, it wasn't all fun and games. This wasn't just about drunken debauchery. These festivals had deeper, almost spiritual undertones. They reflected a world turned upside down, a time when the ordinary became extraordinary and the sacred became profane. It was a mirror held up to society, showing both its flaws and its potential. But as you can imagine, not everyone was a fan. The church, despite indulging in these festivities, eventually cracked down on the Feast of Fools, declaring it heretical and unworthy of Christian society. By the 16th century, the celebration was all but extinct, though its spirit would live on in other forms. So, there you have it, the Feast of Fools, a wild, chaotic tradition born from pagan revelry and nurtured in the shadow of medieval cathedrals. It's proof that even in the darkest of times, humans have always found ways to laugh, mock, and rebel against the powers that be. If there's one thing the Feast of Fools nailed, it was the art of flipping the script. In a world where hierarchies were as rigid as castle walls, this celebration let people live out the ultimate what if. What if the lowly baker ruled the town? What if the clergy turned into jesters? And what if the king, well, maybe he'd get a dose of humility watching a peasant don his crown, even if it was only made of twigs. At the heart of this festival was the Lord of Misrule, a figure who embodied chaos. This was usually someone from the lower classes, chosen to preside over the festivities like a carnival king. Imagine your grumpy neighbor suddenly given free rein to boss everyone around. They'd issue ridiculous decrees, stage parades, and oversee mock ceremonies that poked fun at the solemnity of real-life rulers and clergy. But this wasn't just mindless fun. These role reversals acted as a social safety valve, allowing people to criticize those in power without facing actual consequences. For a few days, the powerless could laugh at the powerful, and the laughter itself was transformative. It wasn't just about mocking the system, it was about imagining a world where the rules could be rewritten. Take the clergy, for example. During the Feast of Fools, church officials would swap their robes for costumes, perform ridiculous skits, and parody sacred rituals. If this sounds a little blasphemous, that's because it was deliberately so. But in a time when the church controlled almost every aspect of daily life, this irreverence served as a form of social commentary. It reminded everyone, including the clergy, that no one was above being humbled, not even those claiming divine authority. And let's not forget the absurdity of the mock trials. Villagers would put animals on trial, complete with prosecutors and defense attorneys, accusing pigs of theft or roosters of disturbing the peace. Sure, it sounds ridiculous, but it was a clever way to highlight the arbitrary nature of power and justice. Role reversals also had a deeper, almost mystical significance. They symbolized the natural balance of the universe, light and dark, order and chaos, rulers and ruled. By temporarily flipping the script, these festivals acknowledged that power wasn't just a one-way street. It flowed in cycles, much like the seasons themselves. However, this temporary chaos came with an unspoken rule. It had an expiration date. When the festivities ended, order was restored, and everyone went back to their roles. The serfs returned to their fields, the clergy returned to their pulpits, and the lords reclaimed their thrones. But the memory of that fleeting chaos lingered, a subtle reminder that even the most unshakable systems could be toppled, if only for a day. The Feast of Fools was a masterclass in the balance between rebellion and respect, between laughter and law. It gave the powerless a voice, even if only temporarily, and reminded the powerful that their rule was not absolute. Now, let's get to the spooky stuff. The Feast of Fools wasn't just about role reversals and mockery, it was also steeped in the supernatural. Medieval Europe was a place where the spiritual world wasn't just an abstract idea. It was a living, breathing presence. People believed that during the midwinter season, the veil separating our world from the spirit realm grew dangerously thin. This idea of the thinning veil wasn't unique to Europe. Across cultures and religions, there's a recurring belief that certain times of the year allow for greater interaction between the physical and the spiritual. Whether it's Samhain in Celtic traditions or Dia de los Muertos in Latin America, These liminal periods are seen as times when the otherworldly is just a step away. The Feast of Fools fit neatly into this framework, with its wild antics masking a deeper connection to the unseen. During these celebrations, it wasn't uncommon for people to engage in practices that we'd now call paranormal. Divination rituals, for example, were a popular pastime. Villagers might throw bones, read the patterns of melted wax, or consult with a local wise woman to peer into the future. And while these activities were often dismissed as harmless fun, they spoke to a deeper belief that the cosmos was ripe for revelation during this chaotic season. But it wasn't just about friendly ghosts or fortune-telling. This time of year also carried a sense of danger. The thinning veil was thought to let in all kinds of entities, some benevolent, others decidedly not. Stories abounded of malevolent spirits, shadowy figures, and even demonic forces that could slip through and wreak havoc. This added a layer of tension to the festivities, as if the revelers were daring these forces to show themselves. Interestingly, this belief wasn't limited to the uneducated masses. Even the church, with all its authority, acknowledged the possibility of supernatural interference. Clerics would often bless the feast halls or perform protective prayers before the celebrations began, just in case something or someone uninvited decided to join the party. The Feast of Fools also blurred the line between the sacred and the profane. While it was technically a Christian festival, its roots in pagan rituals and its embrace of the supernatural gave it an air of mysticism that defied easy categorization. For the people of the Middle Ages, this mix of the holy and the unholy was less a contradiction and more a reflection of their worldview, a universe where the divine and the demonic coexisted, constantly battling for influence over human lives. What makes this so fascinating is how it mirrors our modern fascination with the supernatural. Today, we binge-watch shows about haunted houses, debate cryptids on forums, and read articles about the latest UFO sightings. The belief in a thinning veil might have faded, but the hunger to understand what lies beyond our physical reality remains as strong as ever. The Feast of Fools wasn't just a party. It was a dance with the unknown. It acknowledged that life wasn't just what we could see and touch. It was also what we could sense, fear, and hope for in the shadows. Beneath the laughter and chaos of the Feast of Fools lay something deeper, a set of occult themes that resonated with the medieval mind. These weren't just drunken parties. They were rituals steeped in symbolism, exploring the balance between opposing forces, light and dark, order and chaos, sacred and profane. The inversion of roles wasn't just about having fun. It was about touching something primal, something cosmic. Let's break it down. The concept of inversion, turning things upside down, was central to these celebrations. The pauper became the king. The clergy became jesters. Even sacred rituals were twisted into parodies. This wasn't just rebellion, it was a reflection of life itself. Inversion symbolized the cyclical nature of existence, where every peak has a valley and every rise has a fall. This idea of balance was deeply rooted in both pagan and Christian traditions. On one hand, you had pagan beliefs in the duality of nature, summer and winter, life and death, fertility and barrenness. On the other hand, Christianity offered its own version of this balance, heaven and hell, sin and redemption, Christ and the Antichrist. The Feast of Fools brought these themes to life, showing that the world wasn't just black and white, but a constant interplay of opposing forces. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Feast of Fools wasn't just about acknowledging balance. It was about actively disrupting it. By flipping the social order, participants were symbolically throwing the universe into chaos, only to restore it when the celebration ended. This temporary chaos served as a reminder that order is fragile and must be constantly maintained. And then there's the occult angle. The Feast of Fools didn't shy away from themes that, in modern terms, we'd call esoteric. The inversion of roles was seen as a way to tap into hidden truths about the human condition and the universe. It echoed the teachings of alchemy, where transformation and balance were key to unlocking the secrets of existence. Even the church, despite its opposition to overt occult practices, couldn't fully erase these underlying themes. One fascinating example is the use of masks during the Feast of Fools. Masks weren't just for hiding identities, they were symbolic tools. By wearing a mask, participants stepped into a new role, embodying both the inversion of their usual identity and the idea that the human self is malleable, capable of transformation. This concept wasn't far removed from the mystical idea that we all wear masks in life, hiding our true selves. These themes of balance and inversion weren't just medieval curiosities. They resonate today in ways we might not even realize. Think about modern celebrations like Halloween, where children dress up as monsters, or Mardi Gras, with its wild parades and indulgence. These events echo the Feast of Fools, reminding us that even in the most structured societies, we need moments to embrace chaos and face the hidden forces that shape our lives. The Feast of Fools was more than a party. It was a philosophical and spiritual statement hidden beneath layers of laughter and revelry. It showed that to understand the light, you must face the dark, and to maintain order, you must confront chaos. While the Feast of Fools officially vanished by the 16th century, its spirit never truly died. Instead, it evolved, weaving itself into the fabric of modern celebrations. From the raucous parades of Mardi Gras to the eerie thrill of Halloween, we can still see the fingerprints of this medieval chaos in the ways we embrace inversion, revelry, and the thinning veil between worlds. Take Mardi Gras, for instance. The tradition of crowning a king of carnival and hosting outrageous parades is a direct descendant of the Lord of Misrule. Masks, beads, and wild antics might seem like harmless fun, but they echo the deeper themes of role reversal and the temporary suspension of societal norms. Just like the Feast of Fools, Mardi Gras is a controlled chaos, a time to let loose before returning to the rigid order of daily life. Then there's Halloween, arguably the most direct modern link to the supernatural themes of the Feast of Fools. Dressing up as ghosts, goblins, or your favorite movie villain isn't just about candy and parties. It's about embracing the shadow side of existence, acknowledging the things that scare us, and perhaps laughing in the face of the unknown. Much like medieval revelers dared the spirits to show themselves, we carve jack-o'-lanterns and tell ghost stories, playing with the idea that the otherworldly is closer than we think. Even New Year's Eve, with its mix of nostalgia and anticipation, carries traces of Twelfth Night chaos. The idea of reflecting on the past while looking ahead to a fresh start mirrors the Feast of Fools' theme of balance. Light and dark, old and new, chaos and renewal. Midnight toasts and fireworks aren't just celebrations, they're rituals marking the passage from one cycle to the next. But the legacy of the Feast of Fools isn't confined to festivals. It's woven into our collective psyche. The concept of turning the world upside down persists in how we think about rebellion, humor, and the pursuit of balance. It's why satire thrives as a form of social commentary, why we celebrate underdog victories, and why we find catharsis in breaking the rules every now and then. Interestingly, this legacy extends beyond the secular. The occult themes of balance and inversion that underpin the Feast of Fools have found their way into modern spiritual practices. The idea that chaos can lead to enlightenment, that inversion can reveal truth, is a cornerstone of many mystical traditions, whether it's the yin and yang of Eastern philosophy or the transformative alchemy of the West. The Feast of Fools reminds us that the path to understanding often begins with disruption. So, why does all of this matter today? Because these traditions, ancient as they are, speak to something timeless in us. They remind us that life isn't just about order and logic. It's about mystery, laughter, and yes, even a little chaos. In a world that often feels oppressively structured, the echoes of the Feast of Fools remind us to question, to laugh, and to seek balance, even if it means wearing a crown of twigs and dancing with the unseen. The Feast of Fools and Twelfth Night chaos weren't just medieval curiosities. They were celebrations of humanity in all its messy, contradictory glory. And while the feasts may be gone, their lessons remain, that sometimes, to find meaning, we have to embrace the madness. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Broadcasting Seeds. I hope you enjoyed this dive into the wild, chaotic, and deeply symbolic world of the Feast of Fools and Twelfth Night chaos. It's incredible to think that these medieval celebrations weren't just drunken revelries, but reflections of humanity's need to laugh at itself, challenge the status quo, and confront the mysteries of the unseen. Whether it's Mardi Gras, Halloween, or even your quirky office holiday party, the spirit of these traditions lives on. They remind us to embrace a little chaos, question what we take for granted, and find balance in a world that often feels anything but balanced. If you found this episode fascinating, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with your friends, your family, and maybe even your local Lord of Misrule. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review wherever you're listening. Your support helps us keep planting seeds of curiosity and exploring the weird, the wonderful, and the downright mysterious. I'm Bennett Tanton, and this is Broadcasting Seeds. Until next time, stay curious, stay balanced, and maybe, just maybe, embrace a little bit of the madness. See you in the next episode.
Down in the quarter where the shadows breathe, and the moon hangs low like a rosary bead. There's a crooked choir singing in the street, kicking up dust with bare cold feet. Painted masks and silent eyes, whiskey breath and whispered lies. Tonight the saints wear tattered shoes and laughter bleeds like a southern blues. 'Cause once a year the line gets blurred between the prayer and the curse unheard. So raise a glass to the midnight crown, where the fool rides high and the king kneels down, marching through the fog and blues guitar like a ghost lit Mardi Gras under shattered stars, where the river keeps secrets no preacher can save, and truth crawls out from an unmarked grave. Tonight we learn what chaos proves when the masks come on, the masks come loose. There's a jester on a balcony with weary eyes, preaching gospel dressed in alibis, saying, child, the world's a wheel and it creaks when it turns. Sometimes it laughs and sometimes it burns, and the crowd sways slow like a midnight prayer. Cigarette smoke tangled in the humid air, every sinner, every saint, every broken soul playing a part in the devil's stroll. For a breath the veil grows thin, where endings kiss, beginnings grin. So raise a glass to the midnight crown, where the bishop stumbles and the beggar is found. Trumpets cry like restless ghosts, and the steeple leans toward the revel host. Tonight the powerless rewrite the rules beneath the battered moon of the Feast of Fools, and the bayou hums like an old worn hymn, where the sacred shakes lights grow dim. Maybe chaos is a sermon that the river softly keeps. Maybe order is the blanket where the proud man sleeps. But the drum still pounds like a broken heart, and the dancers fall apart till the fool becomes the prophet in the end. And the last joke lands on me, my friend. Let the lanterns burn low, let the bones of the night rise slow, let the holy meet the wicked where the Mississippi flows.